Welcome to Voices of Resilience, part of the Iron Sharpening Iron universe, where stories of strength, healing, and hope come to life. I'm your host, ATHENA Lyons, also known as Mama Lyons, and this space is dedicated to amplifying the voices of those who've turned pain into purpose. Each episode, we dive into real conversations about courage, self-discovery, and rising stronger than ever. So lean in, take a deep breath, and be inspired by the incredible voices of resilience, because every story has the power to heal. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Resilience, where we share the stories of people who have faced adversity, made courageous choices, and turned their experiences into purpose. Today, I'm excited to welcome Angela Salazar, founder and lead strategist of Semilla Consulting, LLC. Angela grew up in West Phoenix, surrounded by poverty and violence, and at one point became a high school dropout. But her beginning did not become the ending of her story. Once someone helped Angela recognize that there was more available to her than the life she had always known, she became determined to break generational cycles and create something different, not only for herself and her family, but for others. Today, Angela helps organizations and communities build trust, retain talent, strengthen workplace belonging, and navigate change. Her career has included work with organizations such as the YWCA, University of Phoenix, and Diversity Leadership Alliance. She has also been recognized as a Latina Rising Star by ALPFA and as an ATHENA Award nominee. What I especially love about Angela's story is her commitment to remaining authentic, even when being herself has not always made the journey easier. Her philosophy is simple but powerful. Sometimes you just need to take a few steps before you see the path. Angela, welcome to Voices of Resilience. I am so glad you're here. Welcome, 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 Angela. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
It's lagging. It's okay.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. One thing for sure, technology has a mind of its own at times, but that's okay. We are live streaming on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitch. And I am excited to bring you to my audience because I believe what you have to share is extremely helpful, especially now. And as I was going over your introduction, I can see how much you contribute to society, to communities. And so I'm very, very excited to hear what you have to say. So first and foremost, so you're a homegirl. Take us back to West Phoenix. What was it like for the young Angela, and what did you believe was possible for your future at that time?
So yeah. I was running the streets back in like the mid to late '90s, early 2000s. I remember as a teenager, being asked by different, people throughout my life, like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And I could never answer that question. I didn't see anything beyond the here and now. I was basically living day to day. Like I said, I didn't know what was going to come tomorrow. I wasn't even thinking about tomorrow. I just was living in the present time. Um, because like I didn't have anything to aspire to. I didn't have goals. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was clearly lost. it was just a difficult time in my life where I always tell people I was on a path that I did not know I was on. Like I was clearly in the brush, just could not see anything beyond a step ahead of me. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, yeah, I didn't have, like I said, nothing to aspire to. I didn't know any um, people to look up to. People always say, like, you know, who do you look up to? And I couldn't answer that question either. I mean, my family was stuck in cycles of poverty and trauma as well. All my friends and family, they're all in the same boat as me at the time. And so, like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so, yeah, it was just in hindsight, I didn't know I was in this dark, stale place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you said so much in that. That's so true. You know, I'm an eighth grade teacher, middle school teacher. I mentioned that, and I look at young people, and I realize that you don't. You're right. You don't know what it is you don't know, but you also only know your environment, and what you learn to do within that environment is survive. I mean, as human beings, we're all wired to survive. And so survival looks different for different people, right? In different environments. So, um, but having a hint at the future, like having, and that's why mentorship and having people in your life that can cast a vision that you can't see is so important. Um, you openly shared that you were once a high school dropout. What was happening in your life in that season, and when did you begin to believe your story could become something different?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I was literally running streets, running with all the wrong people. And I tell this to people, it's an addicting lifestyle. Like you don't know what's going to happen from day to day. It's an adrenaline rush. I mean, exciting things happen, dangerous things happen, and it's a tough lifestyle to get out of. And so, you know, I mentor youth now, and that I'll die on this hill about mentorship. You have to share what you've learned. You have to share, you know, how to navigate life in the future for some of these youth who have no idea. They have nobody. They were in the same boat as me. They have nobody to turn to. They have nobody to aspire or look up to. And so, mentorship piece is like a big, huge component. And the reason why I do what I do is because I don't want people to fall in the same path that I was on. And I know the struggle. It's a tough path to be on. Yeah, some people get some breaks, but overall, it just makes life so much more difficult. And people, adults, mentors will tell you things for a very good reason. And the young people just need to understand where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of heart. They come with nothing but love and support. You know, sometimes we hear advice from adults and it's like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. But you got to understand where that's coming from. They really are truly trying to support and uplift their own community by saying the things that they do.
That's right. That's right. It's hard to see it when you're young. I was there. You were there. I think the people who work with young people later in life, if you can just stay connected to who you were when you needed an adult in your life and just give some grace, it goes a long way. Because I feel the same way. In working with kids, I know that sometimes they just want you to listen. And maybe in your adult brain, what they're saying makes no sense, but in their mind it does, and you have to like meet them part way, of course, give them good guidance. But I, like you, believe in mentorship. It's so important. um but yeah, sometimes we do sound like Charlie Brown's
Yeah,
teacher. Walk, walk, walk.
yeah, and going back to that, like we only know what we know, and we don't. If we haven't been see, and I'll give it a metaphor, right? The movies. If I've only seen one kind of movie, that's all I feel like. That's all that can be made. But if I see a 3D movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this brand new technology, right?
Right.
The same goes for life. If kids only see a certain picture, which is poverty and stress and violence, they don't know anything else. They don't know that there's another life to be lived beyond that. And so that's where mentorship comes in, because I've been there, done that, and I can clearly help kids understand, you got goals right now, you got to multiply those times 3, because it is
Yes.
possible. And I am a huge component about representation matters, which is why I
Hmm.
lead and do what I do with this company.
Hmm.
Representation matters. If you've had the lived experience, something that people can relate to, it is more likely to be absorbed and understood and acted on. I see so many programs where they bring in people from other communities, and they have a huge disconnect with the youth that they're serving or the community that they're serving. This could be somebody talking to the youth, this could be somebody coming into a corporation. You can tell the disconnect, and there's a difference between somebody who's obtained the knowledge through higher education or formal education versus someone who's actually lived it and been through it and practiced it. And so when I talk to the youth, I come back to them right off the jump, like, this is where I'm from, this is what I've done. um, I don't dress up, some kind of way. I dress up the way I've always dressed up, because then they can relate to somebody like me. But then once I tell them where I've been and the things I've done, then they understand that it's possible. But then they also see a different picture, right? I'm
Yeah.
not saying don't bring in other consultants or other people, because they also need to see that as well. You're giving them multiple viewpoints, but it does start with somebody that they can connect with.
Absolutely. No, and it helps also that they see someone they recognize, whether it be culturally, ethnically, it doesn't matter. Seeing someone that they recognize, it says possibility. You are a mirror of the future for them. So, and you know the language, you understand, you know what they're talking about when they're speaking back to you. You understand it. Very, very powerful, very powerful. And you're right. Others mean well, but it's not the same as if you know you've walked the talk. You know exactly what it feels like. Um, and somebody came along for you. Let's talk about that. Someone came along for you. Someone showed you that there was more to life than the cycles of poverty and violence that you knew. Um, who lit that fire? Who was that person or people?
Yeah, I always bring it back to one of my first mentors. Her name's Susan Lopez. She goes by Three Step.
Hmm.
She's from the Garfield district, which is one of the oldest neighborhoods, gangs, whatever you want to call it, out there.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and she was part of a program for youth who really kind of were lost like me. I don't even remember how I got into that program. But through her, she started teaching me about Chicano studies, and I do identify as a Chicana.
Hmm.
For those of you who don't know, Chicano is a culture that is a mixture of American and Hispanic culture. We don't identify as Mexican most of the time, but we also don't identify as American, and so we're kind of somewhere in that middle.
Okay.
And so she was teaching me about Chicano leaders, those who have broken down barriers, those who have changed systems. And that literally lit a fire under my butt, because it's like now I have people to aspire to. Now I've seen people who look like me who have made significant changes in the community. Um, and once I started seeing that, it was like a hunger. It's kind of hard to explain. Like, I just wanted to read more and more and more about all these great leaders, both male and female. And then there was a point where I was kicked out in my junior year in the very beginning. And so I had to spend literally almost every day somewhere, right? I was either partying at somebody's house, but the majority of the time I was at the Phoenix Library, spending all day there, just reading what I could read. Um, and even that, now I'm saying that out loud, it was kind of like, that's weird for like a 16-year-old to be doing, right? Like just going to the library, I'm just going to go read all day. But yeah, she was teaching me about these leaders. And then so when I was at the library, I was like, oh my gosh, who else can I read about? And I was reading about anything and everything, giving myself a informal social studies education at the Phoenix Library. But it was because of that, now, like, I felt like I had an opportunity to do what they did. Like, I knew there's more to this life than just doing what I was doing. Um, and it gave me something to strive for. Like, and I feel like that's the importance of ethnic studies. If we can put that back in the school system, kids are going to start wanting to read and learn more about what these amazing people did. But that's also a reason why they removed it, because keep us at a certain level if we don't have those ethnic studies in the school system. If we just learn about one kind of culture, whose culture are we uplifting? And so, yeah, that ethnic studies, Chicano history, oh my gosh, it was just so powerful. Yeah, that's really what elevated me and pushed me to see a different picture of life.
Mm. So, first of all, I want to say thank you for shouting out reading. I am a reading teacher, English language arts teacher, believe in the power of reading. And so, thank you for highlighting that, because if you put the right books in the hands of young people, they can also use that as a role model. They can also, that's what you did. You saw, I was the same way when I read, the schools, obviously, Martin Luther King is a part of everybody's, that we knew about Martin Luther King. When I got my hands on a book about Malcolm X, it was life changing for me. And why? Because I identified more with Malcolm X than I did with Martin Luther King. I love the notion of the by any means necessary philosophy, because that's who I am. And we had a lot of great leaders that have come before us, that were setting the example for us to continue to run with the baton. And there's something else you said. You said, yeah, I was at the Phoenix Library and you were reading, and that's something for a 16-year-old. Well, Angela, you were already purposed for greatness. Clearly, you were in training for the greatness, the things that you were going to do, and what you're doing now. That was all a part of it. You know, it was always in you, and so you had to live and go through some things so that you can be who you are today, serving. I'm such a, and I'm speaking that over you, but whether or not you believe that, I don't know. But I certainly believe that you came up with purpose from day one, and it was just a matter of time. And some of you, some, not just, I mean, when I say some of you, some of us are chosen in a way to break those generational cycles, right? And that's what you did. Um, and it had to take a lot,
Yeah.
you know. Tell me about that. How did that feel as you realized you were making that transition?
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you said that, because I always tell people yeah, obviously I have moments of, you know, starting off that way, but I don't regret the overall journey, because if I didn't have that journey, I wouldn't know what I know now, and I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing now to help others, right?
That's right.
But breaking those cycles, getting to where I'm still trying to do what I'm doing, it's tough. Um, it really took a lot of introspection work, right? Like somebody to start the introspection work, and then me to actually take action on it. And
Hmm.
and I always tell people, it is breaking from the norm, whether it's cultural, community based, whatever, right? It could be in corporate sector, right? There's a corporate culture. It is breaking away from the norm or whatever's been established as the norm in whatever area you're in. In
Hmm.
my case, it was stepping away from cultural standards or what has been established in my family and in my friends. I literally had to cut everybody off in my life, including family, friends, every single person I ever grew up with, breaking away from that. And it's tough because you don't want to feel like like you're shunning everybody away, but you're doing it for your own value and your own reasoning because you know you need to take steps to move in a different direction. Um, and personally, it's setting aside ego, right? We all have an ego. I know what I know. I'm smart enough to do this, or I'm smart to do that, or I know already. Especially as kids, you always hear that. I already know, or like I know it all, right? We had to
Hmm.
put aside that ego
Hmm.
and then have
Hmm.
this humbleness about us that we can learn from anyone, everyone. Like ask the
Hmm.
questions, learn about other people's journeys, and that's what I do to this day. Every single person I meet, everybody has value, and I just want to hear their story, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not about status. It's not about titles. I just want to hear your why. I want to hear why you're doing what you're doing, how you got to that point. Um, and then like, yeah, you take snippets from everybody that you come across, and
Hmm.
you can either use it or don't, but everybody's going to pour into you in some way, shape, or form. And that's kind of how I learned to break cycles because it wasn't because once I stepped out of my community, like I said, I broke away from literally everybody. And I always tell people I moved from West Phoenix to Tempe, and that's a culture shock. It's right
Yeah.
next door to each other, but they are two different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once I started talking to people from other communities, I started learning so much more about the world and learning that the world was so much bigger than the community I was born and raised in.
Hmm.
And kids, youth, they really can take informal education by talking to more people beyond the community that they're surrounded by.
Mm. True. Very true. That's why field trips are important. That's why it's important to get kids out and take them someplace else, away from where the school is, and let them see other things. And some kids, that's the only chance they get is a field trip to go away from the school. I talk to people my age
Yeah,
who say,
yeah, because
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, you talk about field trips, and I just came from an event where they had a panel of youth, and that was the big thing they were saying. The education system is not preparing them for the real world, right? But going on these field
Mm.
trips or even engaging with other people who are entrepreneurs or CEOs or presidents or whatever, any field, that's an informal education that is preparing them for life because now
Hmm.
these people are pouring into them and letting them know what to look out for, what to prepare for.
Absolutely.
The education system is not really doing that. You're teaching them mathematics, reading, the basics, right? Which is all
Hmm.
important, but there's another level to that they can learn from other people. So yeah,
Hmm.
that mentorship, going back, mentorship is huge, and the field trips and going outside beyond the formal education system.
Absolutely. Well, and it takes a village. It really does take a village to, to really truly raise up a child. And we've gotten so far away from the village mentality, but we really need to come back to it. Community, village, very, very important. Storytelling, sharing stories, all of that stuff is important. That's what helps to maintain our culture. It helps to maintain, have our kids make a connection. Because if you think about it, each generation is further and further away from some of the things that we know that happened in the past, and our ancestors worked really hard. I always think about voting rights and how, you know, people are so nonchalant about voting, but what people went through in our past to be able to vote, You just, it's a disservice to me to not show up and exercise my vote. Whether or not my vote counts in your opinion, I don't care. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I know people, who sacrifice their life for us to have the right to vote. And so young people need someone constantly reminding them of those things, because we're getting farther and farther away from that. You brought up something else, and I wanted to touch on it. You were talking about, getting away from, sometimes you lose your friends and family and people who don't see things, or maybe they aren't growing at the rate that you're growing. um I always think about the, probably one of the most overused metaphors on the planet is the oxygen on the airplane thing. They tell you put the oxygen on yourself first before you do your child, because your child isn't going to be able to save you if you stop breathing and they still breathing, but you got to be able to save them. And I think about that when, even though you feel like you're walking away from, or you're separating yourself from people that matter, what greatness comes once you do that and you get yourself strong. Now you're back in the community and you're able to do so much more than if you had never left and got, metaphorically left. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's essential. And I want young people listening to know that sometimes you're going to have to let go of somebody who's not good for you. So thank you for sharing that. Um, you have a quote. Sometimes you just need to take a few steps before you see the path. Um, was there a time that you had to move forward without knowing how everything was going to work out?
Oh yeah, I say it's almost all the time. We never truly know what to expect. We can have some expectations for ourselves, but the universe has a whole nother path laid out for us, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't see that path. Like I didn't see that path in any of these steps that I was taking throughout my life. Like I said, I was lost deep in the bush, but somebody, came into my life, showed me a path, pushed me to just keep walking, right? And then little by little, even while I was in these programs trying to get out of it, I still didn't understand it, right? But I just kept walking. The path get clearer. Even when in my one of my positions in the corporate world, I didn't know what the path was. People were still pushing me, and I just kept walking. I kind of just, it was like a trust fall. You kind of just go, right?
Right.
And so that's why I tell youth, you know, just take a couple steps, because then it's going to start to become clear eventually. And past, there's some, you're going to have forks in the road. Um, you don't know which way to go. You just take one and hope that, it goes in the right direction. If not, we're going to circle back and start all over. Yeah, I mean, it has happened over and over again in my life. As a teen, navigating corporate spaces in the nonprofit world. I remember when I was being asked to take on a new role in the nonprofit space. That was kind of like brand new area to me, a brand new role. But I was like, okay, let's go for it, right? And then now I'm in this space again as an entrepreneur. Like I didn't know
Hmm.
what to expect. People always told me you should have your own business. You should have your own business. And I was like, why? No, like I don't know nothing about business. And
Right.
now here I have my own business, and I don't know everything still, but I'm still just I'm taking taking it step by step, and little by little the path is getting clearer. Especially, there's so much to learn and know in the business space, but it's getting clearer every day.
Absolutely.
So that's why I love that quote, because we don't need the whole picture in order to
Mhm.
keep moving. And if you're waiting for that whole picture, you're never going to see it. You have to actually just take the steps moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Michael Jackson video where the tile lights up in the whatever song that is, where he's walking, and then the tile lights up each time he takes a step. I see that sometimes in life. I see that it'll light up when you make that step, but until then, you're not sure. But you got to make the step. You got to take the risks, right? Entrepreneurship requires that of
Yeah.
all of us. A lot of risk taking. But if you stay focused on your passion, if you stay focused on your purpose, on what you know that you're supposed to be doing, and I think by now, Angela, you figured it out that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing because your whole life was set up to get you here, right? And it's amazing. And then you more and more you will reach people. I love something that you've said in terms of remaining authentic and true to yourself. That's one of your greatest challenges, but at the same time, and I get that, especially in professional environments, because I too I've had to do my fair share at times of, especially when I was younger, of code switching because it's not easy. And I like what you said, the difference between adapting to a room and losing yourself in a room. Let's talk about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah. That's always a tough subject. Um,
Okay.
Authenticity. I mean, it's been showcased in very different manners, and I tell you, when we say be authentic, it doesn't mean just go all out and be, X, Y, and Z, or be the loudest in the room. That's not what the authenticity is about. It's
Right.
really, and I always tell people too, early in career, you have to understand the playing field, right? You have to know the game. You have to understand the players. Um, and yes, and at times we do have to code switch. We're in a culture that's already been established by a dominant culture.
Right.
Um, but it is on all of us to try to change that culture, right? We're trying to be the norm. And so little by little, once you understand the playing field, start bringing yourself back into that field, right? Now you know the power dynamics. Now you know where you can truly be yourself and who you can be truly yourself with. Um,
Mm.
I always say also be careful of boundaries, right? Because we do live in a society where people will take advantage of that. Based on how we look, how we talk, being our authentic selves, people can see that as a means to target, right, or take advantage of. And so we have to be careful with being our authentic selves. But again, I always tell people learn the playing field, learn the players, learn the game. And until you can kind of see where you can bring yourself into those spaces authentically, by all means do it because then you're going to start breaking those molds. You're going to start allowing other people to also do the same because in some spaces you can have everybody that's all code switching and you're never going to see anybody bring themselves. But once the one person does, people really truly acknowledge that and see it and say, you know what, I'm going to bring myself here too, my full
Yes.
self.
Yes.
So yeah,
That's
don't
spot
be
on,
afraid
Angela.
to
That's right.
go slow, right?
Mhm.
But then, yeah, just start
Yeah.
breaking those barriers little by little.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody told me a long time ago, learn how the game is played before you start trying to break the rules of the game. Don't,
That part.
we really, really, um, if you are that person who authentically will show up and advocate for others, and but you better be good at what you do. You better make sure that you know your craft or know your profession, whatever it is, whatever space you're in. Be good first before you decide that you want to show out, because honestly, you're right, that's the first way to end up out the door. And I do think that That's a little hard for younger people. These more recent generations are very much so all about bucking the system, speaking up, speaking their mind. But the difference is, have you earned the right to do it yet? Are you good at what you do? Have you created value enough that you can leverage that value? And that's, I think, where the message is, kind of lost. Whereas we understood that, or we learned to understand that. But yeah, this is I love what you're
Yeah.
saying though. Adapting is one thing, but losing yourself is another. So very powerful message. Um, so and you had a specific situation yourself that you experienced, um, workplace situation.
Yeah.
You want to share about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a situation where one of my previous employers had a manager kind of corner me in a room, and use some intimidation tactics, threaten me
Mhm.
behind closed doors just on a one-on-one situation. Um, and it was time I thought, this wasn't going to happen to me, especially with this individual. I thought, she's been around other people outside of her culture, and she felt like, I thought at the time she was, understanding and equitable at the time. But then, because of a power dynamic, she wanted me to do a particular action based on her own judgment. And when I pushed back, she stated, who's to say you're going to be the first on the next round of layoffs if you don't do X, Y, and
Wow.
Z? And
So she
so it was
threatened
like,
you.
what?
Hmm.
And I was saying, I mentioned to her I didn't feel like that was appropriate initially, but that was after a long ass pause. And I say that because one, it caught me off guard, and two, it was at a pivotal moment where I definitely saw significant changes in the person that I was. Like I told you, I came from some tough backgrounds, and so when
Yeah.
she mentioned that, it was like all these thoughts. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, we're behind closed
Yeah.
doors. Who wants to
Yeah.
intimidate who? Like at first, it was like, do I take this route?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could
And then it was like,
you could have gone street on her.
yeah,
I got it. I
yeah,
got
and
it.
it literally crossed my mind. I'm not gonna like cross my mind.
Hmm.
But after a long pause, you're going through all these thoughts, and then it's like I gotta remind myself of the why. I worked my ass off to get to where I'm at.
That's
Like
right.
people know me as a knowledge source. Like any space that I've been in, every position I've been in, I've really worked to be the best at it, to be the most knowledgeable at it, to show that my worth is valuable because I'm going to do the best and I'm going to bring my best. And so when this happened, it was like, remind yourself of the why. You didn't get to this point to lose it all in a split second.
Mm,
You've gained so much knowledge up to this point. You're better than this. Take
good for
the
you.
right choice. And so after that long pause, I was like, this is not an appropriate comment. Would you double down on this, or would you say this in front of a director?
Mm,
And she doubled down on it and said, yeah, I'll say it in front of a director. And I said, okay, well, let's hold off on continuing this conversation until we have a director present. And she mentioned, no, the director is not coming back for 2 weeks. She's on vacation. I said, well, we'll wait for the director and we'll have this conversation 2 weeks from now. And then she didn't like that comment. Um, and then she's like, who's going to believe you over me?
mm,
Kind of motioning like, I'm this brown skinned girl, and here she's a fairer skinned woman.
mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
I think it was like in my late 20s at the time.
mm-hmm.
And so, and I was like, is she really like, she's going all in with this? And it did strike fear in me, right? Because this is the life in the age that we live in. Is it's not been established. This kind of culture has been long established, and she knew the power dynamics, and she was clearly going to use them against me. And so I had to have this conversation. And I really was surprised at the composure I kept during that whole conversation because, like I said, I could have went
So it
way
was sideways.
sideways real quick.
Oh yeah.
But I had to remind myself of the why. We had that conversation,
Right.
um, and she just bawled her eyes out, playing the victim. And it was just an unfortunate situation where, I had to state my case. I'm like, why would this even come up? Like, I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
make this up out of clear blue sky and jeopardize my employment here.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's because of a situation like that is also why I do workplace culture, and I do DEI racial justice, because I don't want people to fall in that same circumstance or be victimized because of race dynamics. And if I could help mitigate it from middle management to leadership, I could be that person to help with that. Like, I've been there, done that. I've been in corporate for so long. I've seen the dynamics that have been used, and it could be very slight, and it could be
Oh
very
yeah.
overt, like the situation that I
Yeah.
had. Um,
Microaggressions all the way
and
to
it's
flat out.
like
Yeah.
throw people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the biggest asks that people want in my consulting work is the microaggressions, the bias, because the introspection work is truly needed, and we get so caught up in this corporate rat race. We
Right.
forget that middle management and leadership, they need that more so than anything to change these systems that corporate abides by. Having these annual reviews or monthly reviews, quarterly reviews. Are you reviewing the person based on their work ethic versus, oh, how do I see them in their own culture? Or are they smiling all the time? I'm gonna give them fives because they bring in donuts, or right, like, or they're actually pulling in work. It's just things like that. Is especially why I do the consulting work that I do now, because I've lived through it. I've studied it. I've wanted to know the human dynamics behind it. And in my nonprofit space, I took that as a full-on education. Like, I wanted to understand root causes and systemic barriers. I wanted to see where those arrive from. I understand um, adult uh, intercommunication, interdynamics, whatever you want to call it, introspection work. How do I push the button on that on somebody else? Um, and it's not to like say, oh, you're the bad person. It's like, let's just pause and think, why am I doing the things that I do? Or why do I think the things that I think? Why did that thought pop in my head? Um, yeah, I mean, the whole power and the intimidation, we all come from different backgrounds, and we're all programmed differently, but we can unprogram it and we can unlearn it. And then we
Mm-hmm.
can reprogram it, right? And we can
Mm-hmm.
relearn or learn how to better navigate situations. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's all to help mitigate it and prevent it. And that's why I say, like, this is not a one-time thing. You can't just do this in
Mm-hmm.
a 90-minute session. It has to be ongoing. It has
Right.
to be a reminder
Mm-hmm. It's like
that
relearning habits.
these
Yeah.
actions,
Mm-hmm.
right, yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
this um, management on all levels, they really do need those checks and measures on their own selves, right? They have to help change the system. If you're just doing it just for your entry level staff, those other people are not, they don't have the pull to make those changes. They could do it on themselves, and you could have a staff that is cohesive and works together, and you can have the retention. But if the middle management is not cultivating those actions and not helping to improve processes, you're still just being part of the problem still.
Right. Right. I totally agree. I think at the end of the day, what you do is you really help people with belonging, and I think that's powerful. Um, it's your experiences that you had really help you to not only be able to help someone in a similar situation, but you have the actual knowledge of what it feels like, what it personally feels like to be put in that situation. And so yeah, and it's so sad that we are, as a country, laws are changing to try to eradicate DEI and all those things that are so greatly needed, um, because we know we know that it's needed. We know that there are people who do not care about whether or not things are equitable in these organizations, and if they're given the right position, the right amount of power, they're definitely going to exercise that power in a way that's not going to be conducive to everybody. Um, and that's the reality. And at this point, it's not a secret. Worldwide, we understand that it's important. So, but I'm glad that you're passionate about it, Angela. I'm glad that you're putting in the work. So, what would you say to the young woman who walks into one of these rooms and feels like they don't belong there? What would you say?
That's a great question. And I love that the youth have an opportunity to listen to this, because I cannot say this enough. Um, a lot of spaces, especially early on, are going to feel uncomfortable. We have to embrace that uncomfortable. Learning is a whole uncomfortable process, right? You just think about
Hmm.
working out, right? If you
Yeah,
never worked out before and then you start lifting some heavy weights, you're going to be sore the next day, right?
for sure.
It's going to hurt. But
That's
if
right.
we keep doing it, it gets easier. It gets
Yeah.
easier. We get stronger. We get healthier. It's the same for any space, right? We
Hmm.
have to be the new norm, all of us. And I say, um, cultures outside of the dominant culture, we have to be the norm, and we have to be in those spaces. We have to aim to be in those spaces. If you see nobody who looks like you in X, Y, and Z, whether it's a field, whether it's a classroom, whether it's a leadership table or invitation, we have to be the one to break into those spaces and make it feel comfortable, right? Let's put on those new shoes. They're gonna be
Hmm.
a little stiff to begin with, but we keep walking in them, they're gonna get comfortable. It's the same thing. We get in those spaces, it's gonna be uncomfortable, but we
Mm.
keep showing up. It's gonna get a little bit more comfortable, little by little. You're gonna start opening up. I remember having this conversation a couple of days ago. We were talking about. I was an introvert in corporate space for a very long time. I
Hmm.
would be in these meetings, and I would hear, suggestions that were going on. And I'd just sit there and I'd be like, this is dumb. Why are we doing this? We're wasting a whole bunch of time. But I was just thinking these things. I wasn't saying anything. But then there was a moment where I actually spoke up and I said, well, what if we did it in this manner? And then my suggestion was actually like taken by the whole team, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And so it's not that's what happened the first time, but it's like I had to work my way up to that point.
Right.
But the more I started making suggestions, or the more I started giving my opinion or opening up, it's not that I was challenging anything. I was just like, either agreeing or, questioning where it came from. It started getting easier. And then on top of that, you get people, teammates that say, I was thinking the same thing, right? And they see you leading by example. And then little by little, you start seeing your own teammates starting to do the same thing, opening
Absolutely.
up because now they feel like their ideas are going to be. Um, and so speaking to the young people, new spaces do become comfortable eventually. You just have to keep going through it. Um,
I
we
love it.
belong anywhere and everywhere.
Absolutely.
We need to make, like I said before, us the new. Just keep going, keep doing for the greater good, to show others, to be a part of the solution and be part of the ripple effect, right? I've done all this, and my big reason was because I know there's other people watching, and I know that I can bring it back and share it with the younger people, right? Um,
Absolutely.
I know if I can share that they're gonna take an example and they're gonna start doing it themselves as well. And then other people, it's like a genuine ripple effect, right? If I can
Hmm. Hmm.
impact one person, that person's gonna impact people. X, Y, and Z. It goes down the line.
Hmm. Yeah, I just wrote an article for my Substack, and I was talking about how it's not just that I'm in a classroom teaching, you know, a group of eighth graders 4 times a day. It's not what I'm teaching them as much as what they see me represent. And am I walking my talk? Am I living the life? Am I teaching them to be critical thinkers, or use metacognition, and am I teaching them to have a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset, but I'm not doing it? No, I have to live my life publicly in a way that backs up and supports what I teach them. Otherwise, I'm not teaching them anything. What I'm doing instead is I'm talking to them and not showing them at the same time, misrepresenting. And so I have to always walk my talk. And you're right, everything we're doing, this is all legacy. You on this interview, somebody's going to listen to this, somebody's going to get something from it. It's going to be life changing. And that's what it's truly all about. Um, when you look at that girl who grew up surrounded by poverty and violence, the young woman who dropped out of high school, and the leader and entrepreneur you are today, what does resilience mean to Angela Salazar now?
Yeah, resilience really is just finding your purpose and the why by just doing. Like, we don't know why we're doing what we're doing, but it comes to us eventually. Um, Resilience, I kind of just kept moving forward, kept doing the things, and like, I didn't know my purpose for a very long time. And like I said, with resilience, it's just it goes back to the path again, right? We don't see what's in front of us, but we just keep going and going. Sometimes we're gonna have some bears. Sometimes we come across, um, things that we have to bob and weave from. Sometimes we take losing, but we keep going. Resilience is really because of that why. Like, at the time, my why, I didn't have kids till late. So my why, it really was for the greater good. It was for myself, and because now I was on this mission to make sure that all this is to be learned and to be shared,
Mm.
right? For the ancestors, we talked about the voting process, right?
Yeah.
Our ancestors fought to get voting rights for us. And I
Hmm.
kind of feel like, just navigating the spaces and being where I was from, I didn't know a lot. But what I have learned now, I'm bringing it back, and I want to continue learning. I want to continue sharing, and I want to. I mean, there's so much still to be learned, right? I don't know. I don't have all the
Right.
answers, but
Right.
the more that I seek those answers, again, the resilience. Um, it's a learning journey. The resilience is really just, you got to keep going, because there's a purpose to it. There's a purpose for you. There's a purpose for every individual. Um, and that's why you keep going, is because you don't see it. You just keep going. It's going to find you eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. Angela, thank you so very much for taking the time today to share with listeners. Anyone who's listening on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitch, please comment, like it, share, spread the word. I think there's a lot of wisdom that was shared in this interview. And like you said, you've walked it, you know. You've shown people that it's possible. You've cast vision. And what you do, you know, we always say thank you for your service to the military and thank you for your service to teachers at times and to first responders and everyone else. But what people don't realize is that there are people like yourself who have served time in a different way, who is making a huge difference in our communities, who deserve all of the thanks and appreciation that we can muster up, because you are truly the boots on the ground. And I love that you not only are navigating communities, but you're navigating corporate spaces. You're bringing in, you're helping people, because I know as a young person of color working in corporate for many years, starting out at the age of like 19, I know how hard it can be. I remember being brought to tears because I didn't say thank you because someone ordered pizza for the team. And I was singled out and brought into an office and lambasted because I didn't say thank you fast enough or didn't say it at all. I was just eating pizza like everyone else. I didn't even realize I was doing something wrong. And that was one of my initial experiences. And over the years, I learned to never be put in that situation again, and to make sure that if I don't belong in a space, either I figure out how to belong or I go to a different space. Um, but I know there's a lot of people out there that haven't figured it out like we have, Angela, and they need that encouragement. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And I hope to have you back again as you have projects or things that are going on. So this isn't your last time on Voices of Resilience, and or maybe the Coach's Corner, or maybe one of the other Iron Sharpening Iron Universe network shows that we have. So, but I appreciate you. To our listeners, please reach out, look up Angela and Semilla Consulting. She's on LinkedIn. I think her information's in the YouTube notes. Look her up and yeah, let her know how she's impacted you.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes,
Appreciate the
absolutely.
opportunity. Love the engagement. Love the conversation. They can also visit me at Grow with Samia on Instagram and
Uh,
Grow with Samia .com.
growwithsamia.com. Okay, awesome. Very good. And I think we have that in some of the notes on the YouTube, I believe. But yeah, they'll be able to find you. And you're definitely on LinkedIn, like you said. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And to everyone else, until next week, until another episode, I appreciate you for listening. And whether you're listening real time and or a replay, comment and let us know your thoughts. All right, until next time.